So what happens when a platform that was designed for open conversation becomes a weapon? Today, we're diving into the really dark side of Twitter, a place where this grand dream of a global town square, well, it kind of devolved into a battlefield, one that's dominated by the loudest and, let's be honest, often the cruelest voices out there.
Yeah, this isn't some rare, isolated incident. This is the daily reality for countless users on a platform that started with such a noble vision. And this isn't just random anger you're seeing. It's a symptom of a problem that is baked right into the very design of Twitter, or X as it's now known. So, to really get how we ended up here, we've got to rewind. We have to go back to Twitter's early days, which were, almost utopian in their thinking. This wasn't just another tech company. They really saw themselves as a movement. I mean, this was their whole identity, this was their mantra. The core belief was pretty simple. If you just remove all the barriers, the best and brightest ideas would just naturally rise to the top. The thinking was that total open access would create these rich, productive, global conversations. And you can see that philosophy right here in the platform's core features. This was a radical commitment to open discourse. You could tweet anonymously, you could tweet at anyone, no matter how famous or powerful, and there was barely any monitoring. The goal, and it was a good one, was to empower people like citizen journalists and dissidents to really give a voice to the voiceless. But, and this is a huge but, those very same features that were designed to foster all this amazing open debate, they accidentally created the absolute perfect breeding ground for something way, way darker. Turns out, an experiment in absolute freedom is also an experiment in absolute abuse. Yeah, exactly. A space with no rules doesn't just protect the vulnerable, it actually empowers the malicious. The very tools of anonymity and direct access that felt so revolutionary, well, they were quickly weaponized by people looking to harass, to intimidate, and ultimately to silence others. So what did this design flaw actually look like in practice? Well, it basically spawned two major forms of toxicity. First, let's look at the organized, purposeful abuse that's designed to silence very specific voices. This isn't just trolling for the fun of it. This is strategic. The writer Lindy West, who is a really prominent feminist voice, she realized pretty quickly that the constant barrage of attacks she was facing wasn't just random people being mean. No, it had a very specific goal: to completely deplatform her through sheer intimidation. And this right here is the absolute crucial point. This kind of harassment is a strategic tool. It's designed to drive people, and women in particular, right off the platform by making the environment so hostile that just participating in a conversation becomes totally unbearable. And this weaponized abuse was taken to a whole other level with Anita Sarkeesian. The harassment became shockingly interactive. It bled into other platforms like YouTube, and there was even a video game literally called Beat Up Anita Sarkeesian. I mean, think about that. It was all a coordinated effort to terrorize her, all for her feminist critique of video games. Just let that sink in. This is a real message sent to a female sports journalist. It's personal, it's incredibly violent, and it's just a constant reality for so many women in the public eye. This is what targeted harassment actually looks like. Okay, but that's only one side of the coin. There's a second, and maybe even more insidious form of toxicity that just thrives on Twitter. This one's a lot more subtle because it wraps itself up in the language of social justice to justify its cruelty. So with this, trolls don't reject morality, they hijack it. They create this illusion that their harassment is actually a form of righteous justice. They frame their bullying as just holding someone accountable. And that, you see, shields them from criticism. It lets them be cruel with a totally clear conscience. And this behavior, it follows a totally predictable and terrifyingly effective four-step playbook. It starts small, right? Something harmless, maybe a little cringy. But then it escalates as the mob digs through a person's entire online history, searching for anything they can find to retroactively justify their attacks. Let's look at a real-world example of how this plays out. So, imagine this. A young woman goes viral overnight. She gets a huge following just for being herself, for her personality, her unique accent. And then, bam! In less than 24 hours after she got famous, the tide completely turns.
This accusation gets thrown at her, and it kicks off this massive pile-on. Now, this wasn't some good faith critique. This was a targeted attack designed to tear down someone who just happened to get popular. And look at this. That's how many likes the tweet with the false accusation got. Over 46,000. That's a stadium full of people endorsing a lie. It just shows you how fast misinformation can spiral when it feeds into a juicy story, a story the platform's algorithm is practically designed to reward. So you're probably asking, what was the proof for this huge accusation? Well, here it is. She followed some right-wing commentators. That's it. Following someone, maybe just to see what the other side is saying, was twisted into proof that she endorsed their beliefs. And that was all they needed to justify the pile-on. So what's the ultimate result when you have these two powerful forms of harassment running wild? I mean, whether the attack is openly hateful or it's cloaked in the language of accountability, the outcome is exactly the same. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Even Twitter's own former CEO had to admit it. Back in 2015, he basically said their whole radical free speech experiment had failed. He recognized that all this harassment wasn't more speech, it was a tool to end speech. That whole dream of a neutral public square just crumbled under the weight of reality. See, a lack of moderation isn't neutrality. It's really an endorsement of the loudest, cruelest voices. It's kind of like leaving a garden untended. You know the weeds are always going to take over. And this leaves us with a fundamental paradox. True free speech needs a space where people can actually speak without being driven away by threats and abuse. By refusing to moderate, Twitter wasn't protecting speech. It was actually allowing it to be suppressed. Because, and this is so important to remember, what happens on the screen doesn't just stay on the screen. The consequences of this toxic environment are real, they are lasting, and they can be devastating. Join us next time as we explore the very real human cost of all this.